Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we'll be covering the key lessons learned from the summer 2025 in partnership with Key Data. So my name is Priya and I'll be your moderator for today's session. I'm the editor of Short-Term Rentals, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, we are a B2B global multimedia platform covering news and multimedia content in the industry. So as mentioned, today's webinar is in partnership with Key Data. Key Data is a leading provider of real-time vacation rental data, covering everything from occupancy rates to booking windows and distribution channels. And today's webinar, we're going to be covering some of that expertise and data to find out what happened this summer and what that means for the industry moving forward. Further details on Key Data are available in the chat box in the bottom of your screens if you're interested in learning more. So just a few housekeeping points from me, covering some webinar guidelines. So after I'm kind of done running through our intro, we're going to be having 45 to 50 minutes of a Q&A panel discussion with our experts, followed by time at the end for an audience Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please drop them in that chat box at the bottom of your screens. A recording will also be made available to all of those who have registered via your email. And we will be offering a quick survey at the end just for some feedback. So if you do have time, please make note of that. So before we jump into today's session, I'm going to just set the scene with a little bit of context here from data that has been gathered from Key Data. So here is a snapshot of some paid occupancy across global markets this summer. And as you can see from the data, the UK led here at 56%, with Canada and the US in the mid-40s and 50s, with Mexico and Australia a little bit lower. So from what we can see here, year-on-year growth was mostly flat or slightly down, showing just how mixed the picture really has been in 2025, with some markets holding up and others softening. And a big factor that we've seen here is that when guests are booking, those bookings more than 60 days out are usually seeing guests stay longer and spend more, while last-minute bookings often see lower rates and shorter stays. So the balance that we're seeing here between kind of long lead, high value bookings and short lead, lower value ones has really been a defining factor for the summer 2025. So with that kind of backdrop, I'm excited to bring in our experts to kind of unpack what the data really means and what operators can kind of take away for the months ahead. So I'd like for our panelists to just briefly introduce themselves, and we can move from left to right, as you can see on screen for ease. So Sally, if we begin with you, welcome, Sally.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name's Sally Henry. I'm Vice President of Business Development for EMEA for Key Data. Delighted to be here today to share some data trends and to try and unpick what it means for property managers.
Thanks, Sally. And Tina, moving on to you, welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm Martina. I'm the head of product marketing here at booking.com, and I'm looking after vacation rentals specifically. Very excited to share with you the latest that we've seen in these growth segments, including homes and families and how they drive growth together.
Thank you, Martina. And Robin, on to you, welcome.
Thank you, Priya. So, hi guys, I'm the Director of Sales here at EMEA for Guesty, which is the world's largest short-term rental property management system. Happy to share my knowledge of what's been happening over the year to date. It's been a difficult year in many markets, and obviously working exclusively with property managers, just trying to navigate the change.
Definitely. Thank you, Robin. And to you, Richard, welcome.
Hi, yeah, I'm a founder of Yes Consulting. We specialize in growth, tech, and a smattering of M&A as well. And I'm with Robin on that. It's been a tough year for many managers.
Thank you, Richard. And further information and the profiles of all of our speakers is available in that chat box. So if you'd like to connect further after this webinar, then please take a look there. So jumping into our discussion, Sally, if we kick off with you, what were the kind of standout booking and occupancy trends that you observed this summer coming from the data perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Priya. I mean, you summarised it with that one slide, to be fair, that occupancy slide. I think the first thing to point out is that guest paid occupancy is at best flat across most major markets. So that means that the demand isn't outpacing any supply, which means it's just that little bit harder for property managers to understand that pace that's coming through. So we're seeing flat to negative occupancy. On the flip side, we always have to look at the rates in conjunction. US, we're still seeing those softer rates, probably flat at best. In the UK, we are seeing very moderate rate growth. So effectively at maybe 1 to 2% in the summer with rates in the UK, not seeing quite the same rate growth in the US and Europe. So it's pretty flat. So occupancy is flat. Rates for the UK have offset some of that occupancy, but hasn't in other markets, which means we've not got that buoyancy where property managers can really push rates much higher because that demand's not there. So, you know, there will be some property managers that are winning out, but how do you succeed in a market where that demand is flat? Means it's getting harder and harder for property managers to navigate. I'll just overlay just another couple of factors because it all kind of goes into the same. We're seeing booking windows getting shorter. So these bookings are coming in later. So when you're sat there as a property manager, your calendar is looking empty compared to where it was this time last year. So that also puts pressure from the owner relations. It obviously puts pressure on pricing, but prices are really, your rates are the thing that are driving your revenue at the moment. So you don't want to drop your rates too much. And then length of stay is contracting. It's almost like the perfect storm for property managers. So that means they're having to sell more bookings just to stay still in that occupancy. So pressure on your operational efficiency, operational costs as well. So, you know, property managers are having to deal with a lot at the same time as being faced with all these tech advances. And I was saying you should be more agile. It's how do you navigate through this market to actually give guests what they want and keep your owners happy as well.
Definitely. Thank you, Sally, for that overview. And Richard, just coming to you here from a kind of strategy perspective, how do you think that operators can really respond to these trends that we're seeing? Obviously, we're seeing quite a split in performance, which, as Sally mentioned, is making things harder for operators to kind of know where to stand and how to operate in these areas. So I'm interested to hear from your kind of lens here.
Yeah, I mean, the industry is always polarized into urban and leisure destinations, you know, and the urban part of the industry is much more focused on what Sally's saying, much more ADR, occupancy, constantly monitoring what they're doing, very short stays. I'm sure Martina will be happy to hear that I've got a few clients who've seen Booking.com take a fairly large slice of the Airbnb window recently as well. So, you know, try and put some guardrails in place as well and don't depend on a single OTA. I think that's always a sensible course of action, particularly in the urban markets. In the leisure sector, I mean, I've got clients in the US, in Europe, and in the UK, and they're all different. Certainly in the US, there's been a lot of turmoil, particularly in places like Florida. And I don't think that's going to come back very easily unless the Canadians decide to travel back to Florida again. Overall, however, I think my personal perspective is that I'm hearing from managers continuously that, okay, we need to worry about ADR and occupancy, but we need to do something else. We actually need to start thinking about our product. We actually need to start thinking about what we're offering as opposed to the price we're offering it at. Because a lot of the data out there, and I hope Sally will agree with this, a lot of the data is generalized and it's very hard to pick out those very competitive things at a hyper-local level. So my advice, and certainly what managers I'm working with are doing, is they're actually going back to basics and looking at the properties and working with the owners to actually improve the product, to actually match it with the higher ADR.
Yeah, I think, Richard, that's a really important point. We have seen different ADR tier segments, which we don't have the time to go into now, but certainly some of the higher end luxury tier are still holding really firm because they're offering something different, they're offering something unique. Can you give that curated experience to guests as well? So I think guests are happy to still travel, which is the first good news. Short-term rentals are actually outperforming hotels from the data we're seeing. So again, you know, good news for the sector, but how do you actually get your share? I think that does come down to proposition, offering flexibility, quality of product, that local curated experience as well. So that is in the hands of property managers that are sat here listening. So rates do play into it. People want a fair price. You've got to understand your context of relative affordability in your current market for your particular property type. But then what else do you offer, and how do you look after your guest on that experience on the way through? That is in the bandwidth of all the operators watching today.
I think it's worth pointing out as well that we've come from a generation in the short-term rentals where, thinking of the UK as an example, and Richard, you'll know this from your clients, that if you go back 5, 10, 15 years, people were selling peak season of June, July, and August in the first 2-3 weeks of January. and your calendar was sold, and that was great without even doing much revenue management. That was how it worked. And what we're hearing all the time, thinking the length of stay windows is shorter and the lead time is shorter. We know that's happening. We shouldn't be caught offside. We knew last year it was happening. We knew it would continue this year, and we know next year it's going to continue again. So I think it's really important property managers start to think about their revenue management strategies. We hear a lot about booking business direct, but all they're doing on booking the business is direct. They're just undercutting the OTAs on price. And it's very simplistic if you say that you do 10% of your business direct to have a cheaper price on your website for that 10% and charge them 90% more. It's not a good strategy. You have to think of your brand, what the flywheel is, and how you'll make money from ancillary products, which again is something in our industry where if you speak to an average property manager, everybody's coming from the same airport, everybody's going to the same bakery, everybody's renting the same bike, everybody's going on the horse riding tour, and they're not clipping the ticket for any of these parts of revenue. Meanwhile, the OTAs are sitting there and they're thinking about the whole experience. They're trying to make sure that the travelers take cater from the second they make the reservation to when they leave the property. So there's a lot more pressure on property managers to do other things than they did before. But if they adapt, they can definitely benefit from the upsides.
Definitely. Thank
I
you.
think it's fair to, sorry, I think it's fair to say, Robin, there's a red flag out there at the moment as well in terms of some of the OTAs, in terms of what the trend is going to be going forward. There's been a massive compression on margin, costs are going up, everything's a specialist skill. It's getting very, very tough, particularly for the smaller ones, particularly the
I
new
think that's
as well.
I think that's true, but I think what I've seen from your data, Sally, and companies like you is that even in the last 12 to 24 months, the share of direct bookings is going down and the share of bookings from OTAs is going up. This is happening at a time when property managers are obsessed with direct bookings, yet it's still coming
Yeah.
down. So this tells me it's imperative that you perform better than ever on OTAs. And a lot of property managers I meet put all of their time and calories into their direct business, which is fine. And if I say to them, what have you done in the last 12 months on Airbnb and Booking.com to increase your ranking? Have you had a third party consultant? Have you invested any money? Have you A/B tested anything? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. And you're charging more on the OTAs than your direct website. Okay, interesting. So I feel like there's a real gap between people accepting the reality of the market to monetize their business and what they're doing at the moment. And I feel like as these metrics come closer to what the urban markets are seeing and what hotels are seeing, we're going to have to adapt as a sector. Otherwise, it'll be a very difficult time ahead.
Thanks, Robin. And Martina, I'm just interested in bringing you in here. So how do you kind of see this playing out from the platform side? All of this discussion about OTAs and kind of direct booking strategies and seeing that outperform in 2025.
So I'll start a bit from the top. Like when we look at our search volumes in the past, over the past 2 years, they've grown about 79%, which is great news because we have the interest. And I think I'd like to throw something else here, which connects with the previous discussion about ancillaries. We actually are seeing that a lot of the search volume happens from our new verticals. We, for those who don't know, our most traditional and historical part is accommodations, but now we've added flights and attractions and ground transportation. And these are attracting more customers, and the more we create attachment rates, the better it is in the end. When we manage the customer experience holistically, in the end, there are lower cancellation rates, etc. So I think my personal advice to vacation rental owners is to see the benefit of the system as a whole. Another example I wanna share is that families and an audience that's growing double the growth rate of everyone else, and that happens on the market but also on us. They switch between property types. Is that a bad thing? It's a good thing. In the end, for vacation rental owners, they get exposed to an audience that grows as a family. Their needs change over time, so eventually at some point they will stumble upon a vacation rental if they didn't choose that in the past. So I think actually, when we look at our own numbers, we're seeing a 10% growth. I'm going to use the Q2 earnings report, not Q3, because I'm not allowed to share this data yet. But in Q2, we saw actually a 10% growth in our vacation rental business, outpacing our other core business. So, like somehow, I hope that vacation rental owners are reaping the benefit of our platform and the connected trip and what it can bring to them. So hopefully we'll get more insights on the peak of the season when our Q3 report comes out. But these are very encouraging signs. And also consistently we're seeing that about 1/3 of the users that come to our platform with a non-specific intent, they end up booking a vacation rental. I think this is exciting. It keeps growing year on year. It used to be 1 out of 7, and within 3-4 years we grew to about 1/3. This is exciting. I think to going back to what Robin was saying, that there's a benefit in drawing out the demand, but also the diversity that OTAs serve, and not be afraid of what happens when you're competing with another type of accommodation, because that might be a good thing in the end. And think about the bigger picture also of how we are going to look after the user, create attachment rates, take care of their full trip, and embed AI more into how they experience their planning, but also their trip management, so that we create and sustain that value for vacation rental owners. We can get more into examples of AI later, but I just wanted to throw in some numbers here that are showing actually a good picture on our side that I'm hoping is gonna benefit the strategies of vacation rental owners.
Martina, just to reiterate what you just said, like if we look at Q2 arrivals in the UK, through our clients, direct share bookings, like the percentage of direct bookings dropped from 55 to 46%, which is a significant data drop. And Booking.com and Airbnb both picked up, they both gained. So you are growing, and to your point, you're growing at 10% for your short-term rental bookings. You can see it in the data that you are sort of diverging away as direct falls. So it is, it is a point that you are trying to give the customer what they clearly want, and you're opening up new people to vacation rentals, which is, it has to be a good thing in one sense. So people coming in looking for that hotel. And I think as the length of stay contracts within short-term rentals as well, suddenly it's becoming more into the play of, the potential hotel guest. I think 1 in 3 bookings now for a 1 or 2 nights. So it's becoming more prevalent to the hotel world. So it's going to start diverging a little bit more into each other.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sally. And also just looping back there to something Sally just said about how we're seeing booking windows contract. We're also, as we mentioned, seeing late booking environments and kind of late demand from guests and booking later. So Robin, I'm interested in knowing from your perspective, how are you seeing property managers kind of adapt to late booking environments with their pricing or tech stack?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think, again, if we go back a couple of years in the UK, there wasn't a mass adoption of pricing tools. And lots of people were used to pricing at a certain time of the year, a certain price for a certain length of stay. There's a general awareness that over the last 24 months, this has changed markedly. It's been changing over time, but it's been expedited over the last 24 months, and we've seen a further expedition of these trends this year. So one thing in the guestie community that I've had a lot of feedback from is people want us to create automated tools to help them identify gaps uh, as soon as they appear, and send automated offers with a discount during those gaps. And then the second thing is that there's been a much more clamor from our community to try and understand the discounting levers that are available on OTAs for last minute bookings. Before, it was always very much focused on early bird. I mean, there's a general consensus, if you speak to a pricing company, they'll always say that you should be the last one to sell your peak availability and the first one to sell your shoulder availability. What we're finding at the moment is that even the peak availability is getting sold much later. So you have to encourage yourself to be brave on holding your rate so you don't drop your ADR, which requires having data to have confidence from key data, or using Price Labs or Wheelhouse or beyond. And then, but very importantly, you have to convince your owners that shorter stays are not a bad thing, or certainly they're no longer a bad thing because of the number of them. And so we've seen companies like Host and Stay, which is a large property manager in the north of England, educate their owners on the value of getting 1 and 2 night stays, which typically is not normal for their segment of business. And I looked on their LinkedIn page yesterday, they ran a report on the number of 1 and 2 night stays they had and the uplift on revenue over the course of a month, and it was double-digit uptake. So yeah, monetizing shorter stays, convincing owners to understand that's the market that's worth addressing. working on last minute levers on the OTAs. There's definitely traction on Verbo, Expedia and Airbnb using the discounting programs they have, which typically a lot of vacation rental owners have stayed away from. And then making sure that they work with a PMS like ST or an alternative where it helps them automate offers when there's gap nights. These are things you have to do when the macro is a bit soft and the environment for the mechanics of when people are booking or the booking behavior is changing. And honestly, it's much easier to use off the shelf technology than it is to try and figure this out on your own.
Thank you, Robin. And we'll be diving into a bit more about AI and the relevance of this in trip planning and adapting to trends in just a second. But Martina, you mentioned a little bit about family and booking behavior. So I'm just interested in knowing from your perspective what trends you're seeing in how travelers are searching for and booking short-term rentals specifically. And obviously mentioning the family segment growing, how are you seeing this shaping demand, and how do you feel operators should be responding to that as well?
Yes, so I'm gonna get to the fact because there was a bunch of questions in one, but I'll start with the families one, which I'm very excited about. So, like I mentioned earlier, the growth that families are outpacing other segments beyond like Booking.com, but we're seeing the same happen on our platform, and we're very excited because they do have naturally longer stays, and they have all kinds of other great behaviors that I'm sure vacation rental owners want. Like they are more minute with the reviews, they're more diligent, which is a good thing because in the end, all of this curates content that is going to be used for their next customers, and reviews are a very important matter of performance. So I can speak a little bit about what we're seeing in their hierarchy of needs. I'm going to be a bit more research based in this answer. So what we have discovered is that the family segment is actually very underserved. So we recently launched a report together with the key data team in the US, and we're just making things a bit simple for property owners to consume. So first and foremost, just take care of the basics. You would be surprised, but a lot of properties that we are observing have a setup that doesn't allow them to be visible in STRz. So starting from the basics, like how many people actually fit? Do you have space for infants? Do you have extra beds and things like that? It surprised me, but it's a very big number of properties on our platform that don't have the right setup to even appear in STRz, which means that if you're not showing up at all, no one's gonna see you in the first place. We're not even getting into the price topic as of yet. The second part is going a bit into the, let's say, the convenience and ancillaries part that Robin mentioned earlier. So families are coming up consistently in our research over the years as the ones who do want to spend on the extra value adds that you want to provide. Because imagine as a family, you have 1-2 big vacations a year that are a hit or miss, and depending on those, your year is going to go well or not. So when families find where they fit, then they are looking into convenience, so they're willing to pay extra. And I know that this is not something that in comparing hotels and vacation rentals keep their pricing relatively simple, understandable. But there is an opportunity to create extra value adds and make them charged and make money out of it. So this is the second part that families are looking after, and we've seen that consistently over the years. And they're actually one of the top consumers of value adds on our platform, which is very exciting. And then I guess like the last bit is like I said, through the connected trip that is getting traction on our platform as we solve more of the friction problems. There's going to be less of our retention of revenue because we're going to help a family, rebook their trip if they have to. From personal experience, it was the first time this summer that I had to change my flight, and I did it through my phone. Through the Booking.com app, and I didn't have to call anyone, and I'm so happy. So imagine a family doing that, and the family planner, raise your hand. Just having to do all this. These things may not seem that material, but in the end, they have an impact into revenue and reduction of cancellation rate, and in the end, just a happy family that's going to give a great review. So these are things we've seen both through data and through research lately on our platform, and I hope they, add some the contradictory effect to what we're saying. Like, these are the customers that stay longer, book earlier, and if we get them right, I think they're gonna naturally help with the reduction of ADRs that I'm hear you all talk about.
Thank you, Martina. And Richard, just bringing you in here. Obviously, how do you feel that property managers are adapting to these expectations and changes, or do you think they are adapting quickly enough?
I don't personally think that most of them are adapting quickly enough to any of this. I mean, Robin's made a couple of comments here I've written down. Obviously, there is a big move on booking direct, and often it's just noise. It's not actually real activity because it does take out a huge amount of work, and it's a very specialist subject these days. You've got to worry about revenue management, you've got to worry about operations, you've got to worry about marketing, you've got to worry about generative search these days and things as well. So I think we have very well-established older companies that are hyper-local and well-known and got good brands. And I work with some who've got 75, 80% direct bookings. Okay, they use the OTAs as a tap or a life support machine. They use them for referrals. Prices tend to be roughly the same, but they offer much more opportunity direct. So they're actually looking at the products, as I said earlier. They're looking at the support. They're looking at true hospitality. They're looking at all those things. Conversely, the newer companies have set up probably, 2019 onwards, let's say, they've become committed to actually running a business, and you cannot start from day one with direct bookings, and therefore your OTAs are your lifeline to success. And people said in the past it's a drug. It's actually a good drug because it brings you bookings. It allows you to survive. But you can be very circumspect about what you do with an OTA. And as Martina has just said, there are so many managers out there who do not even list their properties correctly. They don't actually go the extra mile to put the extra value in to actually get listed at the top of the list and actually drive more traffic and more revenue and build their business and reinvest in their business. So I think it's going to be even more difficult than it was previously. And I'm a bit of an AI freak myself, and I'm working with companies on restructuring their business to account for geo search, and everything else that goes with it. And Booking.com and Airbnb and all the OTAs will be doing the same thing as well. So you're going to have to invest in time, effort, and expertise. And the only other thing I picked up in all this is there is a lot of data out there. Sally's got a lot of data. All the dynamic pricing companies got lots of data. Obviously, Guestie's out there as well, and everything Robin said, spot on, because you're going to need to automate your pricing. But I am hearing so many managers saying, do not let that dynamic pricing tool alone in the wild. And they are now recruiting revenue managers, and there are not very many revenue managers out there that come at a very decent price for like 2, 3, 4 hours a week. But this is happening at scale. People are bringing the human mind back into revenue management because it's a very complicated business. And the OTAs, I mean, on one hand, they're doing a fantastic job. On the other, I've got records where they've discounted some of my clients' properties by several £100s to get the booking, and they've paid for it themselves. So, they're paying to get more market share. And that's quite irritating if you're a manager and you witness this, of course. So there's a lot of games being played here, and you're going to have to educate yourself if you want to make this a successful business as a manager. And I hate to say this, but you're going to have scale. You're going to have to grow.
I think what's important as well is that, like, in life, you're either a player or a victim. You're a person who says, oh, I don't like the way this happens. I don't like AI. I don't like pricing. I don't like OTAs. I don't like Google. I don't like my iPhone. Or you can say, I understand all these things very well, and I'm going to make sure I play my game, my strategy really well on all these platforms. And what I hear a lot of in the industry is, I don't like the OTAs doing this. The OTA are doing their job. They're driving their business. They're trying to get as many customers as they can to your properties. That is their sole focus. Their job is not to make you happy as a property manager. They're not indexing for happiness. They're indexing for GBV. Your job as a property manager is to monetize all of the opportunities and all of the channels that are there for you. And what we've seen in the last 12 to 24 months is a lot of kickback against OTAs in terms of sentiment, a lot of sentiment towards investing energy in direct bookings, but the data shows that more and more people are booking on OTAs than ever before. So that says to me the effort that people are putting into their direct business across the market as an average is not yielding results. So my advice to property managers is one, make sure you monetize your business on OTAs, just like Martina said. I have met thousands of property managers over the last 5 years. If I asked them for their strategy for optimizing the Airbnb search rank, not one of them does it the same as anybody else. It's like everybody has a different idea of what works, so they clearly haven't done their research and they're clearly not using consultants to help them. The second part is on your direct business. Chris Stevenson, who's the vice president of Marriott Homes, gave a very good presentation last week at Gestival, and he was explaining the Marriott brand. Like Booking.com or Expedia, they've got big companies in their brand. If you're a property manager and you're in the town that I'm in now, which is Kenmare, your brand is very much golf, fly fishing. Your brand is how to get them from Kerry Airport to where I am here. Your brand is the top 5 restaurants, the top bakery, the creche, the children's facilities. That's your brand. Now, are you monetizing that brand? As a property manager watching this, are you monetizing? We talk about hyperlocal. Hyperlocal is the stuff that OTAs do not do, that you do. Booking.com do flights, restaurants, all those amazing at a macro level. But hyperlocal is your local area. And what I find when I book on property managers, which I do, is that when I go to their website, they just say, hey, it's 5% cheaper than Booking.com or Airbnb. That's not that interesting. What is interesting if you can say, hey, here's 10 things you can do in my local area. Here's a discount on all 10 of them. Here's the phone number of the WhatsApp of the guy who will take you fishing. You can give him a call, tell him I said you were coming. He'll give you a discount. So you have to make the effort to be hyper local. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're competing with massive companies who can give discounts on attractions and flights and hotels, or even discount your accommodation, like Richard said. And you're saying, well, I'm going to compete on price, which you never will do, because if if discounting on price on its own was working, the number of people that are booking direct would be going up, not down. So
Yeah.
think of what your brand is, think what hyperlocal really means, and that's where the opportunity to compete for more direct business is. But even aside from direct business, that's where the opportunity to compete on ancillary revenue is. Whereas like there's companies like Enzo Connect and SweetHop, but you can use a third party, you can do this yourself. But I would suggest as an industry we've been a little bit lazy on the ancillary revenue piece, and the margins are really tight on property management businesses. So again, I'd encourage you to think about that piece as to whether you monetize your OTAs, use a third party for ancillary revenue, or you do it yourself and try and increase your share of wallet across the various aspects of revenue that guests are spending when they come to your location.
Yeah, you've got to squeeze a lot out of this business in any way you possibly can. There is certainly a lot more discussion around what's the value of my company these days.
Thanks both for that. And obviously we mentioned as well generative AI and the boom of kind of AI planning and trip planning. So can we use that as a tool maybe to counteract what we're seeing? Or, and Martina, I'm interested in knowing what you think in terms of trust and intent when it comes to AI and trip planning.
So the word trust next to Gen AI is not yet matching based on what we see from research. So I'm going to walk you through what we've heard, but it changes over each quarter, right? So the latest we've heard in July when we launched a sentiment report is that people know about AI, they feel excited about the opportunity, but when it comes to giving it full freedom to take decisions for you, then the numbers of course drop. So from being excited about AI, 95% highest in LATAM and APAC, a bit more conservative in EMEA and NORAM, where we have close to 80% knowing what AI can do for them. I'm talking about travelers now, by the way. It drops down to 15-30%, showing full trust in AI to make up its mind for you. So I think where we have to put our effort right now is to embed AI more and more and make it seem like a natural process, not make it seem, actually make it a natural process where the user is still in the lead to make up their mind, but AI does the hard work of synthesizing information for them. So this is at the moment where we are. Maybe that changes because, like I said, quarter by quarter, we have new releases and new capabilities. So I can't say how long this is going to last, but it's a great opportunity, and now we're using that in the planning phase of a trip, which can be the most stressful for the complex trip types that are probably the most rewarding for our business, but also in trip when someone needs to make changes and they have to use some assistance. So I'm not going to use a lot of predictions here. It's just like the sentiment at the moment is in a bit of, you know, a lot of knowledge, like Richard was saying, and yet we have to make it very useful. And one piece of advice that I would like to leave owners with is that they have to make their themselves Gen AI ready. And what that means is that instead of worrying about how a property page looks like and what's at the top, what's at the bottom, the most important thing is to have always updated content, because Gen AI can pick up from so many things to give anyone an answer, from photography, from facilities, from descriptions, from user reviews, etc. And that's why we're working really hard actually with our connectivity providers like Guesty to make sure that we have top-notch content tech, so that we source everything, and then Gen AI is going to do its magic. So I agree with what Richard and Robin were saying earlier. We shouldn't be stopping that from happening. We should be reaping the benefits, and we have a great responsibility to make it trustworthy and make it embedded while the user is still in the lead of making up their mind, and enabling vacation rental owners to source the content in a manner that's going to help us make them Gen AI ready. And just another tiny example, last year we launched something really cool, which was called smart filters. One of the things we don't want people to do is overfilter. So when they start applying too many criteria and ticking a lot of boxes, then all of a sudden supply may reduce and visibility of an owner may automatically get cut off. Because for some reason they didn't include a feature in the facilities, but they had a photo of it. Actually, this has to stop, and we're close to having that, to being done with that, because smart filters are going to use a sentence that I write. I want a vacation rental close to a lake XYZ, and it's going to pick up from my words and curate supply for me. So I'm actually very excited about what Gen AI is going to do, because it will actually expand the choice and curate it. So hopefully this gives some pointers to vacation rental owners to not be afraid of it, but still reap the benefit of it. And like I said, we have a great responsibility to source their content so that we do all this curation magic.
Just to build on what Martina said, I think that when I think of AI, I think of, Sam Altman recently said that AI will likely be the end of the world, but in the meantime, we'll have some great companies. So I think of stress, I think of complexity, I think of being overwhelmed, I think of how does it matter to me? And it ultimately comes back to one point in my view for property managers, is that you have enough to do. Managing owners and finding guests and just being a property manager is an extremely challenging business. So try not to worry too much about AI. AI will come to the human race and it will come to you. And companies, we will take care of AI. Booking.com and Airbnb and Verbo will do their part to take care of AI. Consultants like Richards will help you with marketing strategies on AI. But whatever you know about AI, every 12 months, it will become rapidly outdated. So there are technology companies out there whose job it is to invest billions or millions of dollars, just like Guesty, on a regular basis to make sure that the connectivity partners to OTAs or your direct business works really well. So instead, try and use AI for the stuff that really benefits your business now, and try not to worry about the macro picture, because if you start burning calories on building technology around AI right now, it's likely in 12 months that will be massively outdated. That's okay for Guesty. We can afford to do it. We're a billion-dollar company. It's not okay for John, who runs a business of 10 properties, who writes a script, takes him a month to do it, and in 6 months' time, that's totally redundant. So when we talk about AI, all of the things that Guesty is doing or the OTAs are doing, they will help you move into the world of AI, and over time it'll become obvious what you need to do. But at this early point, I wouldn't get too bogged down or overly focused on building AI tools yourself.
Yeah, I'm completely with Robin on that. It's a huge waste of investment, of course. So I'm an advisor to Boom now, which is also a PMS, and that's first AI PMS, and they facilitate your operations by automating a lot of these things by using AI. And we're going to see more and more of that. We're going to see business intelligence coming out of that as well, and it's going to be voice orientated. You'll be able to just ask your PMS, whether it's Boom or Guesty or any of them, which is my worst performing properties over the last month. How can I improve these things? What distribution should I focus on? Can I contact the owners? All this sort of stuff. It will become voice activated. I frequently get contacted by companies who invented new tools. And over the last month or so, I've been introduced to two fantastic web companies using AI for creating websites with brains, essentially. It's doing a lot of the hard tasks that you would actually have to try and figure out yourself or use a web developer to do. There's companies out there using data to recommend to you pricing in a verbalized fashion. It's not giving you a graph or anything. It's just telling you, well, you need to do this, this, and this, price of this in June next year, and this in July next year. It's giving you smart advice by using AI. There is one thing, however, that I've been working on quite a lot with people, and that is I'm very conscious that people have websites. And I think Robin has pointed out that you go to a website and you're not going to book on it because it's pretty rubbish. People are going to have to think very, very carefully about the booking journey. AI will help you here. But this generative search optimization is making a big difference. I looked at a couple of customers I've got who do 2 million unique visitors a year. Their increase in large language model searches is up by about 12,000% over the course of 8 months.
I'm with you on this, Richard, and I think it's important for people to realize that in a world of AI disruption, which is coming, gone are the days where you can use a legacy tech partner whose tech is pretty average, who charges you a small amount of money and it seems like good value. You're going to need a technology partner like Guesty or a similar company to Guesty that is raising a lot of money, that's evolving all of the time, and that is building for the future. When I look at what Guesty is doing for the next 24 months and stuff we haven't released to the market yet, it blows me away. Some of it worries me, it's so advanced. So when I hear that you're using a legacy PMS and that nobody's ever heard of, I'm just like, look, that might have been fine 5 years ago, but in the world we live in, with the pace of change, you do need to be very, very careful with your tech providers and who you choose, because things will change rapidly, and keeping pace with that change will be extremely challenging for companies.
Can I just add to that, because it's a bit of a light bulb moment for me about 18 months ago, is that for years I've been saying to people, go to a PMS and bolt on 10 best-in-class add-ons, dynamic pricing, guest apps, stuff like that. Of course, AI then entered the arena, and unless you've got all the data in the same place, you cannot use AI intelligently because it cannot cover all those parameters. So I'm with Robin on this, whether it's Guesty or Boom or any of those coming forward, you need to know that they are actually focused on AI as a main parameter of the business going forward. And if you're not, you could easily get left behind here.
Definitely. Thank you both. And obviously, Robin, would you say that there are specific maybe pricing or yield management strategies that you're seeing work well when we're seeing ADRs come under pressure?
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing is that it's obvious that I mentioned earlier that last minute booking is becoming more of a thing in our sector than it ever was before. It's also when you're managing multiple properties with people booking on multiple platforms and cancelling what have you, and the fluidity of the market, just having that ability for your technology partner to identify when there's gaps in your calendar that can appear literally in minutes or hours, immediately surface those to OTAs or on your direct booking platform with a discount that's relevant to your occupancy and time of year. This is all technology that we're building in Guesty for our companies. I looked at this last week and I was sitting down with some of our developers and I was like, wow, why are we spending so much time burning our engineering calories on building this product? And they were like, everybody wants this product. And then I looked at why everybody wanted it and I saw the data and I was like, okay, so we've identified the market is changing. We've identified that short-term bookings, last-minute discount levers, and automation on gaps in the calendar are really important, and that people can't do this manually, and we're building a solution. And this is my point about things are changing, and if you're paying for it, if you're paying a technology provider, they need to do the heavy lifting for you, because it's a devil's own job managing a property management business. If you're going to try and move into this hyper revenue management world where you have shorter stays, last minute discounts, multiple levers, new OTAs, the idea you can do that without a very advanced technology partner, it's just nonsensical. So yeah, we are seeing all these shifts. We are seeing in the UK the guesty community is adopting to these shifts, and they're making money where they didn't make money before. But owners will know on this call that there's an education piece around, sorry, property managers know there's an education piece around saying to an owner, you know, hey, John and Mary, by the way, we're now taking 2 night stays in Cornwall and Devon. And they're like, oh, here, no, like we don't do that for all of the reasons we know why they don't do that. And that's why it's important to have partners like Guesty or Key Data or companies like Richard to say, well, here's the data you share with the owner to show them why you do this. Here's how we're going to do it in an automated way, and we're going to test it. Here's the results of the tests to get them to come on the journey with you. Because a lot of owners don't want to do that. And if they don't do that, then ultimately their occupancy will drop. And what typically happens when owners drop in occupancy, they don't kind of go, oh, well, I forgot to pivot. They kind of go, my property manager's not very good, and they move. And so, you know, as a property manager, your job is to keep your owner happy. For Guesty, our job is to keep you happy. So it's a flywheel, and we've put a lot of work into this over the last couple of months, Priya, and we've seen some really encouraging results. And you know, we know this is going to become even more challenging, and this is why we continually building automation in our system, and new pricing plans and new rate plans all of the time. And I think Sally will attest to the fact that all these trends we're seeing are set to continue. So yeah, again, just choose the right technology partner. I'm not saying you should use Guesty. I mean, you should unless you're crazy, obviously. But definitely a partner like Guesty who can do this for you and to help you with the automation behind it.
Thanks, Robin. And just coming on to that, Sally, obviously with seeing ADR still high and occupancy showing a slight lag, how do you kind of think from a data perspective? Do you see any signs of that gap narrowing into 2026, or how are you kind of approaching that data?
I think everyone's clear that that demand is not yet outpacing supply, which means that there will continue to be sort of flat to very low growth occupancy, which doesn't give you that ability to push rates up sky high. What we're saying is you do a lot of rate adjustments to be all over your rates for whatever is relevant for your market, and have rate discipline, because that's the only thing that's maintaining your revenues right now. So understanding your market and what you expect for your property types, or, you know, because if you've got fabulous properties with sea views, hot tubs, and, you know, sleeps 20, clearly you're going to command a premium, and you will expect to get that. But if you're sat with a huge amount of supply of other 2 bedrooms around you need a different rate approach. So I think it's have a strategy, first of all, understand what some of these market movers mean for your particular portfolio. And don't look back and be caught out. I think Robin said it earlier as well. Like, there is enough data out there, whether it's through your PMS, through key data, through just reading the news, to understand and educate your owners. Do not be caught out and have owners leaving because you've not had that conversation with them to explain to them what the market is currently looking for. So have a plan.
Yeah, for sure. And Richard, do you have any thing to add there when it comes to that plan and building that strategy moving forward?
I completely agree. You have to build a strategy, and you're right. If you've got 24 2-bedroom apartments that all look the same in some places, it's going to be completely different to having, you know, 10 luxury leisure places with swimming pools and things. But there is go back to what Robin said really early on. You know, in the UK, for example, it's been a traditional business. It's been around an awful long time, you know, and everybody, to a degree, has been used to, we get a deposit, it's non-refundable, they got to pay within 90 days. I'm now constantly hearing this panic. You know, my wife looks after a couple of properties, helps people as well, you know, and one of her friends gets, oh, I've had 3 cancellations this week. Once upon a time, that would never have happened. It's now because guests are becoming aware that cancellation policies are a lot more lenient. If you look at the Airbnb moderate one, which drives me mad, they actually say, well, we think cancellation 5 days out is quite fair because you've got plenty of time to rebook it. Well, I can tell you, you're not going to rebook a 14-bedroom luxury place in Dartmouth within 5 days. So you know, you have to have the right strategy. But there is also this red flag out there right now, which is driving a lot of this. I need to do something about my business. I need to put a moat around it. I need to ring fence it in some way to de-risk it. Okay. And, you know, Robin's absolutely right. The OTAs are doing what they do best. They're making, you know, great revenue and supporting their shareholders and things. But this is a very hard business. And if you're going to make it work, you've got to use all the tools in your tool set. And you've got to think like an octopus. You've got to be everywhere, doing everything.
I just want to make the point again. I think it's really salient point because this year I would speak in 28 countries at 35 conferences, and everywhere I go, people complain about OTAs, and I do not understand it. Okay, I worked in Airbnb for a long time. I've got lots of good friends in booking and Vrbo. But what I would say to you is the job of an OTA is to make sure the guests have as much availability as possible at the best cancellation policy at the best price to drive the reservation. Your job as a property manager fundamentally is to look after the owner and grow the number of owners. And what I'm feeling in the property management industry is property managers are burning a lot more time on trying to get guests than they are keeping the owner happy. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a direct booking strategy. You should have. It should be really good. But you should have, if more of your business comes from OTAs, you should have an OTA strategy. And when I meet a property manager and I say to them, in the UK, which I meet all the time, I say, have you spoken to Richard in Yes Consulting and got his 50 years of advice on what you should be doing in OTAs? No, I haven't. Okay, so you haven't spoken to anybody who knows anything about OTAs to tell you if you're doing the right thing. This is incredible. For me, this is incredible. Get your OTA business right first, if that's where most of your business comes from. Build your local, hyper-local brand, like I said, second on your direct business. Educate your owners because they need education at this point in time. And then use as small a number as technology partners as you can to future-proof your business for the future. This is the advice I give people.
Yeah, it's an afternoon conversation, Robin, of course. I mean, I've got a manager who says, you know, the OTAs made more money than I did last month. They don't even send me a Christmas card, you know. And
That's attacking emo. That's like saying I bought an iPhone from Apple or Facebook doesn't answer my calls. That's not their job. They're doing their job.
I'm not going to argue with that, Robin, but this is the conversations that you hear, of course.
Of
There
course.
is actually a trend as well going on here in certain sectors. And that is that if you've got owners, I mean, I see people posting everywhere on the websites. Yeah, we list on Home2Go, we list on Airbnb, we list on this, we list on everything. Owners are actually now becoming very aware that the OTAs actually generate nearly all the bookings for some companies. And they're heading off to Guesty and other PMS systems and going, well, I'll just use their system and hook it in and I've got all the bookings anyway. Why am I paying this company 20% for something I can do for, well, how much is it? €5 a property per month, Robin, or something. So
No, it's true. This is my point. It's like, you know, you mentioned earlier, Richard, there's property managers in the UK who have been around a long time, who've got a very high percentage of direct business. But they just do a really good job on servicing the owners.
they
That's
do.
like I really feel like as a property manager, your job is to get a number of owners, look after them, get them to be referral partners, and grow your number of owners. But when I go to most of the conferences, Richard, that you're at, there aren't too many panels on how to get owners. The panels are all on about how to get guests. And I'm like, hey, it's not that difficult to get guests. Where they come from and the contribution margin can be different. But getting owners is difficult. Owner retention is difficult. Setting owner expectations is difficult. And educating owners as to the way things are evolving and the changing and shift, that's difficult. But when I go to conferences, these topics don't come up that much and it surprises me.
Yeah, owner management, owner acquisition is a very specialist skill for sure.
It's very difficult. And I think one of the biggest challenges for owners is one of the biggest challenges for property managers is owners not understanding the shifting landscape and having unreasonable expectations.
Correct.
And that's where having a consultant or a third party, but like key data and saying, here's what happened this summer in the UK, just so you're aware, all those nonsensical things you're asking me, that's like 10 years old. There's a shifting marketplace and I'm keeping on top of it on your behalf. And it's a really difficult job. And that's why you're paying me that percentage that you're paying. And if you want to go and do it yourself, good luck, but it's super challenging, right?
It is eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if it's easy, they start with another one, and then it's logarithmically painful.
Of course.
Well, I mean, we've talked a lot about how these things are kind of helping us rethink our strategies moving forwad, and the approach that we've been taking and how that's affected us and how we've seen that appear through the data. So kind of ties me into my final question, which I'll throw out to all of you, which is how can property managers kind of combine the data, the tech, guest insights to future-proof for next summer? Sally, if we start with you.
I mean, I think take these lessons learned. These are trends which aren't just this summer. These have been a continuation really over the last couple of years. So I don't think, to your point, they're going to change. So I think getting owners to understand that as well. So those expectations, making sure your prices are set. So if it is shorter durations, understand your operational costs are going to increase, that you have that like flexibility around servicing these shorter term guests as well. I think we've talked long and hard about distribution, but you know, optimizing to get the right booking at the right time, the right property on the right channel is in your own wheelhouse. So you should be focusing on that to understand what you're doing. So I would invest in the tech which helps keep your mind free for strategy. So add on the right tech around you to help you be agile and expect to keep changing, and not set your strategy at the start of summer and hope it stands through for the end of the summer. Like, be really dialed in, surround yourself with the right data, the right tools, the right tech to be able to respond. And that communication with owners is vital. You need your owners on side.
Definitely. Thank you, Sally. And then Martina, coming to you.
I guess for me, the takeaway is your key partner in all that. And I will remove the OTA angle for a second, for a change. Is your technology provider. Like, honestly, that makes a ton of a difference. You wouldn't imagine, but we work with connectivity software providers that don't provide multiple rate plans to support multiple policies so that someone can optimize between non-refundable and refundable rates. But that's so fundamental. So choosing the right tech provider is very key. We recently also did some integrations with RMS systems because they weren't consuming our data. So when we say to vacation rental owners that there's a benefit with being on booking.com, we also want to do the reverse and give our data so that the revenue management systems optimize using our own reservation data as well. So these are two things that we're investing in, and I think it's having your tech partner is your tech provider is your sparring partner in your growth strategy. So I'm not gonna sing my own praises of why to be on OTA. I think we've said too much of that, but the right tech provider that can make you Gen AI ready and have the right foundations for you to get the best out of the demand that we can provide is super key.
Thank you, Martina. And Richard, what would you say your main takeaway would be?
Well, I think like everybody has said, you got to get your tech stack right. And I don't think it's just for next year. I think it's for the next 5 years. So there are plenty of tool sets out there and plenty of information available. I do think people should look at AI tool sets as well to create efficiencies and, you know, to replace that grunt work that happens in an office and try and move those people out into the hospitality part of your particular business. So I think that's really, really important. I do think people, and you know, we've spoken a lot about OTAs and Book Direct, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are on the Book Direct side, and a lot of people very dependent on OTAs. So it's a bit of an old battle going on a lot of the time. But I honestly think everybody's going to have to start thinking about large language model searches going forward and how they structure their business and their content and everything else that goes with it. And that's an education. So each of these things is a bit of an education to get out there and learn, try and pick the right providers, etc., etc. 25 years ago, this was a piece of cake. You just put an advert out on a newspaper, or you stuck it on Owners Direct before it all rolled up. Before Robin Clifford walked into my office representing Airbnb and he got kicked out. And it's moved into a very, very sophisticated business now. And you're going to have to address it in that manner as well if you want to survive. Its growth will allow you to survive. Stagnation will definitely kill you.
Some wise words there, Richard. Thank you. And Robin, coming to you.
So I remember that day I walked into Richard's office, and for context for the viewers, I was the first supply lead Airbnb ever hired in 2015 in the UK. just to test if they could hire somebody that could incrementally bring on supply in a cost-effective way. It had all grown organically to that point. And I went into Richard's office in Devon, was at Torquay, and you were there with your wife, and he practically did kick me out with a few life lessons. And it was then I realized, and since then, that was in 2015, Richard, I think it was like the Q3 of 2015. I remember it like it was yesterday. We've become very good friends, and I've learned a lot about the industry in my time. And people always ask me, "Oh, you must be a property manager yourself back in Ireland because you know so much. You know so much about the business." And I'm like, "I'm not a property manager because I find it too difficult. I've never once considered building a property management business because I don't like the idea of the amount of work that's involved. So my advice to people is not to stop being a property manager. These people are more entrepreneurial and harder working than I am, perhaps. But my advice would be find a technology partner who can copper fast in your business and do all the things you don't want to do that you want automated over the next 5 years. On the direct versus the OTA business, I never think this is a debate. You've got to do as much as you can on both channels, but I'd encourage you to look at the OTAs because they're growing their market share. That's a fact. It's not my opinion. We've just heard from Sally. And understand if you're monetizing your business on OTAs. When was the last time you spent €1,000 on a consultant to help you with your OTA business, but you're spending thousands to help you on your direct booking site, which creates a fraction of the revenue? The last piece of advice I would give you is that if you are overwhelmed by all of the changes and all the things we're discussing, there are probably, and you're in the UK, which I guess this audience is, there are people who've kicked me out of their offices like Richard, and there's probably two other people I know in the whole of the UK that I would give £1,000 of my money to. If I was managing a property management business with 5 properties or more, I would give Richard or one or two other people £1,000 to look at my business and do a health check. Really, really important. It's like it's the price of a good night out in London if you like a few drinks. So my advice would be choose the right tech provider, get a consultant to do a health check on your business, and be ready for the changes that are coming in 2026. And the last thing I would say is that Richard mentioned large language models, and there's lots of other stuff coming. This is my caveat about investing in direct business. The way internet search works, or people look for travel, or even pay for travel, is going to be markedly different beyond what we can even dream of in 2 years' time. And the companies who've got the most money are the ones designed to benefit from that. You may not like it, that's just the way of the world. So that's again why we mentioned, I think everybody mentioned on this call, connectivity partner is really important. And the last piece, just if you can afford a consultant, have a health check on your business, it's worth doing so.
Great, thank you, Robin. And thank you all again for all of your insights. We've covered a lot of ground there, so some really good takeaways. And I just have a few more closing slides to run through. But again, thank you for all of those wonderful insights.
Thanks.
Just move on to the next slide. Great, so just moving on now, just a few more closing comments from me. Make sure to stay tuned to our next webinar on the 30th of September on Can Technology Build 5-star guest experiences, where we'll be covering a lot of information on the tech side and yeah, building out the guest stay. And we are live with tickets for the Short-Term Rentals Summit. So if you are interested in taking part, then don't miss out and get your ticket now. All available through the Short-Term Rentals website. And if you are interested in working with us, then please reach out to our head of growth, whose contact information is on screen and in the link below. And finally, again, another thank you to all of our panelists and to Key Data as well for partnering up with us on this webinar. I hope you got some really good takeaways from it, and just stay tuned for this short video and outro from the IHM team.
At IHM, we believe in the power of connection. We exist to inspire, to inform, and to unite decision makers who are shaping the future of hospitality and real estate. Our why is simple. We believe this industry thrives when people and ideas come together. And we're here to make that happen. So how do we do it? We challenge the status quo by creating platforms that go beyond the expected. We blend intelligent content curated events, and a strong community into everything we do. Making it easy, accessible, and genuinely useful. From online engagement to face-to-face connection, we're known for being insightful, collaborative, and refreshingly human. We publish 4 leading multimedia brands, each a trusted voice in its sector, delivering breaking news, bold opinions, and fresh trends. We host world-class events, panel discussions, podcasts, award ceremonies, and webinars. Designed to spark ideas, drive conversation, and create impact. With over 62,000 monthly web visitors, 55,000 email subscribers, and 69,000 social media connections. Our reach is deep, and our community is active. We're partnered with the biggest names in hospitality, and we'd love to connect with you. So whether you're looking to grow your visibility, meet the right people, or understand where the market's heading, read, watch, listen, and meet. Do it all with IHM.